It took me 14 years to receive my diagnosis for endometriosis. The average time period takes about 7 to 10 years to get this diagnosis. Today, I am talking all things symptoms, diagnosis, surgery results for endometriosis. Hey friend, just a disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for informational purposes only. It's not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your doctor or other qualified health provider with any questions that you have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you've heard in this video. The content shared here is based on my personal experiences and research and may not be applicable to everyone's situation, so use this information at your own discretion. And all the sources for information that I spoke about in this video will be provided in the description below. If you're just clicking on this video and you're like, what is endometriosis? What is endo? I did do a video that is dedicated to explaining what endometriosis is, and I will put that in the description below, and you can click on that to really quickly just catch up on what endo is and return back to this video. Really briefly, endo is a full body chronic condition that has no cure. It's when abnormal tissue grows throughout the body, most commonly through the pelvic cavity. It can grow on, near, or actually infiltrate, so like deeply infiltrating endometriosis, various organs, which can then cause a bunch of dysfunction and symptoms. I have read stories where many people who didn't have symptoms found out they had endometriosis when trying to start a family and having a lot of struggles with that. So to begin my story with endo, my symptoms began before my period actually happened. I got my very first period at the age of 14. However, bowel symptoms I had already in middle school before my period actually started. And what that looked like was frequently having stomach aches, having issues with different foods, lactose intolerant and sensitive to gluten, and just feeling kind of like sick all the time with my stomach and having stomach pains. Always had issues with food since I was a baby, essentially. And even when I was a little girl, like after eating out at restaurants, feeling sick, throwing up after eating fast food because it didn't agree with my stomach. All of those IBS-like symptoms started way before my first menses. Once I got my period, all of that worsened. As far as periods go, extremely painful periods. The first day of my cycle, spending hours vomiting from pain, on the toilet from pain, blacking out from pain, like to the point where I was driving my car once and I had to pull over because I was blacking out from how severe the pain is. My menstrual cramps during my period wouldn't just stay in my abdomen. The pain would go to my hips, run down my legs to my feet, go all the way back up. It was like the wave. And having also a ton of cramping in my rectum, everything, even the clothes on my body causing pain. And now that I'm kind of on the other side of surgery, I was actually found to have kind of like an appendicitis-like event. I use this now when people ask me about pain levels. When, like, for example, like when you go to the doctor and they're like, okay, rate your pain from 1 to 10. It's very difficult for me to do that because when you've had chronic pain, I feel like my pain scale is really skewed because I've had to experience daily pain for years. My tolerance is kind of like has been affected by that. Pain that I had that I thought was endo and it turned out to be like appendicitis-like pain. It's a little bit different, but as far as like severity of how much it was, that would be the beginning point of where my cramps would start. Long periods as well. Mine would last around 7 to 9 days, usually more like 8 to 9. Very heavy periods, going through a lot of pads, going through a lot of tampons. My mom also had painful periods and other women in my family had painful periods. People would always talk about how that was normal and like, oh, it's just like something as a woman that you have to deal with. That's like a huge societal misconception that is really affecting people from getting help because painful periods are not normal. Having chronic pain is not normal. Just kind of like backtracking, I tend to talk around in circles sometimes, so I gotta get myself organized here so we can have things move smoothly here. We're talking teenage years through early 20s. Most of like my pain and my symptoms for my reproductive organs stayed within the week of my actual like period. Past 3 or 4 years now, so right now I'm 28. So I would say around 24, 25 through now is when my pain and my pelvic pain and my symptoms started expanding throughout the entire month, except the 3 days after my period would end,
was when I would kind of feel the best. I experienced severe, painful bloating endobelly. So this is not your typical bloating. It's when your abdomen becomes super distended to the point where it looks like I'm pregnant. It swells, it hurts, it's very uncomfortable. It can last hours to days when that flares up. Ovulation week in the past 4 years, what that looked like was, it was almost like having another period without the blood, with just like pelvic pain, the endobelly, fatigue. I've suffered from chronic fatigue for years. Chronic fatigue is like unreal. The fatigue I would have, and I still experience, is, it's like, how am I even alive right now? Like, I literally felt I was a zombie and I just couldn't function. Like, it is so intense. It's really hard. You're expected to act like normal. Obviously at school and work, you're supposed to function, and you're just dealing with all of this stuff every single day. At least for my case, it was like every single day. And then during my fluctuations with my hormones, depending on where I was in the month, just having additional pain and additional problems that was interrupting like my education, interrupting my work days, having to leave work. I'll never forget when I was in college, I was working at a Chipotle. Your girl can roll a mean burrito. They have a very strict policy there around like vomit. So it's, if someone throws up in the bathroom or a worker or something, they have really intense cleanliness standards, which is awesome. But they would have to like shut everything down, and I think they have like cleaning hazmat suits or whatever. I had to leave work multiple times because of the nausea and the stomach aches and the problems that I was having and the pain that I was having, causing me to vomit. To my GM at the time, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I need to leave. I'm going to throw up, and I'm going to run to my car to throw up in my car so you guys don't have to shut anything down for cleaning purposes. And like, I literally did that. I ran, and to the point of like, I always keep plastic bags in my car, because so many times where I've had to vomit after like getting to the parking lot after going to a restaurant and throwing up. It was such a common thing, or nausea and throwing up. So I always keep plastic bags in my car. And so that day I ran to my car to throw up in a plastic bag. And that was something that, you know, was very consistent for me, unfortunately. I was planning my entire life around my period. Was obsessive. Like, I had multiple apps tracking my period. Everything in life, like, I was always looking to when my period was, feeling pure devastation when it would arrive on special events, to me from being able to exercise, and like my fatigue and my pain, like it just took over everything. In my early 20s, there was like a period of 18 months where like I could barely eat anything without constantly feeling sick. I got a colonoscopy and endoscopy at age 21, and they're like, you're completely clear. You have nothing. All your tests are clear. Everything's fine. We're going to say it's anxiety and depression. I started seeing like a nutritionist to try to get like help with that. My bowel symptoms were always a problem. With my cycle and kind of tracking it around my menstrual cycle, I would notice through different like fluctuations in my hormones when they would get specifically worse. And then the last 4 years is when everything really like got really bad. I started having bladder symptoms, frequent urination, pain, just constant like pressure and pain on my bladder, urgency, like crazy urgency for my bladder and my bowel, where I am telling you, it was taking over my entire life. It was like I wasn't getting a signal of like, oh, hey, like you have to go to the bathroom soon. It was, I would just get this emergency SOS signal for my bowel. I was like, if I don't get to a bathroom right now, I'm literally gonna crap my pants. This was horrible. It wouldn't just be like that one time, be like, okay, finally I emptied my bowel, my body removed its waste, and I won't have to deal with this for the rest of the day. It would happen multiple times because my bowel wouldn't fully empty. So whenever I was far away from a bathroom, I had so much stress and so much anxiety. It was affecting me every single day, having that crazy urgency and like having to hold and then find bathrooms. Another thing about my stools is my second colonoscopy and endoscopy was a few years ago. I noticed that I started having extremely thin stool, like pencil thin. I Googled it. I was like, what is this? I've never had stool like this. It seemed like there was like a ridge going down it, or like indentions. And then I would also be having really strange shaped stool. That's when I went to go get another colonoscopy endoscopy, and they were like, yeah, everything's literally fine. But then later on, we find out that, of course, no, not everything was fine. But from like that GI standpoint, it was all good. Let's just slap IBS over this and refer her to psych. Other symptoms I had was cramps in my rectum, okay? I'm talking ovulation week. This is when I have, and some people call it butt lightning, but it literally feels like someone is stabbing you in the rectum with a knife, just out of nowhere. And I noticed it happened to me a lot actually when I was sitting in the car, but it would just be random, and it was like excruciating pain. Scream out in pain randomly, and my husband would be like, what's going on? I'd be like, oh, it's just a butt cramp, you know? Just a butt cramp. And obviously, like, him and I have a lot of jokes because humor helps everything, I think, in life. I was bouncing back and forth between seeing GI specialists, talk to my gynecologist. I would explain to them and be like, hey, I'm literally like blacking out from pain. I am vomiting for hours. I'm on the toilet like the first couple days of my cycle. I mean, I would be going from the tub because hot water really helped me. So I would lay in the tub in hot water for hours and hours. I would explain this to them and they would basically brush it off. Oh, like, have you tried birth control? Just take a Tylenol. Like, I just felt very dismissed and not taken seriously. And then what made it worse is like whenever I would get a ultrasound, for example, or like any kind of the scans, everything always came back clear. So I would be referred to psych for anxiety. I would be recommended antidepressants. Really, really frustrating. And I had initially for a little while, I had tried birth control. While it did minimize some of my symptoms, it made me feel really sick in other ways. Of a type of migraine where it's not recommended for me to be on birth control. And the big misconception is that pregnancy takes care of endo. It does not. That birth control takes care of endo. It does not. The endo tissue just continues growing and growing. And the birth control, while it might mute some of the symptoms, the tissue is just growing and growing and just keeping on what it's doing. Pain during intimacy, and that pain increased over the years. And then within the last 5 years or so, tampons became extremely painful for me where I couldn't use them anymore. Obviously, expressing this to somebody is very vulnerable and very uncomfortable. As a society, this can be very taboo information. Whenever you're talking to someone about pain that you're having during intimacy, I had a lot of experiences with folks saying really unprofessional comments to me. This one particular medical person, this is so cringy. Basically blamed the pain on my partner's genitalia and was saying that was the reason why I was having pain. And when I told her, no, it's also with tampons, it was just brushed off. I just was not being taken seriously, feeling gaslit. How is it all in my head that literally I wake up and I have all of these problems every single day? How is it all in my head? So then I started seeking out a lot of holistic care and stuff like that. One of the people that I was working with was also spreading a lot of misinformation about endometriosis, who was telling me avoid surgery and that surgery was bad. Here, take 5,000 supplements, and this particular supplement, if you take it, it's gonna get rid of your endometriosis because other people had taken it and it got rid of their cyst or it got rid of something, and this is all you need to avoid doing surgery. And that was extremely damaging. Endometriosis there's a ton of misinformation out there. I can't remember the exact stat, but I think it was over 60% of doctors in this particular study were uncomfortable diagnosing and treating people with endometriosis and couldn't even identify the three main symptoms of endometriosis. So there was a lot of issues everywhere. The burden goes on to you as a person to figure things out. So then I found an amazing surgeon who's an endometriosis excision surgeon. And today I'm going to be sharing with you the results. So after 14 long years, my excision surgery confirmed that number one, it was not all in my head. And number two, I had endometriosis on my left pelvic sidewall, my left uterosacral ligament, my rectovaginal septum. So that is the space between the rectum and the vagina. There's, I think the common name for it is like the pouch of Douglas, or like the cul-de-sac or something like that. The right uterosacral. And that one was kind of interesting because it talked about the fibroconnective and adipose tissue with endometriosis, serosal adhesions, and then it also had calcifications with an associated multinucleated giant cell reaction. So there was a lot going on in that section. Then I also had to have my appendix removed. Like I mentioned before, and this was like a month before my surgery. I was like, I swear I'm having appendicitis. Pain that's like a pain level that's similar to the pain that I'm used to living with. However, it was different kind of pain, and I was unsure. Someone that I got it checked with, touching it, was like, yeah, I don't think it's appendicitis. And I was correct. There was an infection that my body had fought off, apparently. My appendix was warped. It was like clubbed on one part of it. When I woke up out of surgery, I knew my appendix was gone. I don't know how to tell you that I knew, but I literally felt it, and I felt so much healthier having that out of my body. That was kind of interesting. Since then, my surgery also revealed that my bladder symptoms, which I thought had been endometriosis, initially was like, okay, I definitely have endo like on, near, or impacting my bladder. And what we know to be true is that the endometriosis that I had did cause pelvic floor dysfunction, which can also impact the bladder, of course. But because they went in, they did, I think it's called a cystoscopy. He went into my bladder, he filled it up with liquid and then allowed it to drain to make sure it was like draining properly and stuff like that. But when they went into my bladder, they were able to take some photographs. Photographs revealed that I had kind of like some hemorrhaging, I think that's the term that he used, inflammation. Again, I'm not a doctor, so like if I mess up some things, I'm not a medical professional, but it looks like my bladder symptoms are actually not endometriosis, and instead the evil twin sister of endo, which is called interstitial cystitis. I think I pronounced that correctly. It's called IC. I don't know a whole lot about it just yet. I need to educate myself. But painful bladder syndrome is something that a lot of folks with endo also have. And so now I'm detangling my symptom clusters, as in like what is what. Now I am so grateful to finally have the validation and the confirmation, I guess the official confirmation for something that I've known I've had for many years and had to fight my way through the medical system to find. I was like, somebody, anybody help me. And no one should have to do that. No one should feel gaslit, dismissed. Pain is not normal. It is not normal. And so many people were telling me that it was, and it's just not. Moving forward now, I have to kind of continue navigating, you know, this potential like new diagnosis that I have, what that means. I need to educate myself on it. And I'll definitely bring y'all along in my IC journey as well, since so many of us have both, as well as recovery and what that will look like. I'm definitely having a lot of progress. However, I'm still like, my body is still figuring things out. It's still working on things. I'm still healing, and we can't really evaluate everything until the 6-month mark. So I will definitely keep you all updated. But yeah, stage 2 endometriosis wreaking havoc on my life. And my hope and prayer now moving forward is that my symptoms will lessen. Honestly, that I don't feel like I'm gonna crap my pants every day, and that my period weeks and my ovulation weeks and like all of that will just come uneventful. So if you are a human being on planet Earth, please, 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 with the women in your life and the folks who menstruate in your life, if they are talking about symptoms, number 1, believe them. Please believe them. And also, don't dismiss pain. Don't dismiss symptoms. I saw something online that said it was like 1 in 10 women. I believe it's more than that, because there's such a delay to getting help, such a delay to getting diagnosed. Some folks, go years and years and years without getting diagnosed. It's just not okay. It's not okay. People need help. Women need help. We need to address this. We need to solve this.